You're listening to the Water Prairie Chronicles, a podcast that supports parents of children with disabilities by sharing the stories of individuals who have grown up with disabilities and the organizations available to help parents along the way. Stay connected with us by clicking the subscribe button and leave us a comment if you want to join in on the conversation.
Do you know an autism definition, or have you ever wondered about autism and Rain Man? In today's episode, Justin Houcek talks with Tonya about how autism has impacted his life and how he mentors others who have autism through his business, ASD With Me. Justin shares some good points on autism for parents. Let's join Tonya as she interviews Justin.
Today on Water Prairie, we have Justin Houcek. I wanted to contact Justin after seeing that he was an ambassador for the Invisible Disabilities Association, and his bio caught my attention. I thought that our listeners would enjoy hearing his story and what he's doing now to help support the autism community. So Justin, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Justin Houcek. I was born in Illinois in DuPage County, and been living in Northern Illinois all of my life, a total of 56 years. And right now I'm currently serving the people on the autism spectrum as an advocate, consultant, life coach, et cetera, et cetera. That's being in a nutshell right now.
Our main topic today that we'll be talking about is autism. And it's a pretty broad topic, but I know for me coming in, even though I've had experiences with different people and for a lot of children that I've worked with when I was teaching and tutoring, I could not tell you a definition of autism. Can you give us kind of a general explanation of what autism is?
I think the constant thing that we see with those, or especially like even with me on the spectrum, is how we communicate, or the lack of it, and basically our need for they say repetitive behaviors, but if you break that into a whole life, it becomes routine and structure. So to me, autism, that's the main differences, and that's the main headers you see when you see autism, is how we communicate, our lack of it, and then are we able to keep friends, or how do we interact with the rest of society? And it does come down to communication, and then our necessity and need for either structure, routine, or these repetitive behaviors that make us feel comfortable.
So the behaviors are more of a comfort issue.
Well, yeah, comfort. Yeah, I guess when you look at, if I know what I'm doing every day, I feel good. If I don't know what I'm doing every day, kind of life's up for grabs. Now, some can live with that, but I can't. I like to schedule in my life. I live by a day planner. If I don't write it down, I don't do it. I can think about something. Like if you say, hey, can you do this? And I don't write it down, I'll do it, but who knows when. But if I write it down, I'll do it the day of, or I'll make sure that it gets done quickly.
Is that more of a, like a more structured environment is a more secure environment? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Okay. Yes, there is no guessing. We're known to either have no fear or like a great sense of fear in some cases. And we're known fear of the unknown. Okay, I know everybody has it, but I think when we have it, it's much more intense. If we're wired differently, then the way that our brain is communicating is sometimes more intense, or sometimes it's lacking that connection. So fear can either be, I really don't have any fears, but I have anxieties under certain circumstances. I don't have a fear of heights, but if I go near the glass at the Sears Tower, I get real uneasy feeling, but I don't have a fear of heights. Okay, so it is, pardon me when I sometimes go off and I can't catch myself in my train of thought, but yeah, that's just the way we are. And so once you have structure, once you have planning, where's the fear? I know what I got to do every day. It's written down. There's nothing questionable. No gray matter. We're black and white.
Okay.
We're black and white. Okay, that's the funny thing is people on the spectrum, the broad color of the spectrum, we like life black and white.
So a more literal mindset.
Oh, totally.
Okay.
Yes, very much literal. And that's, in some cases, that's how I grew up, was knowing that practice makes perfect. And then when I was 13 or 14, I realized practice doesn't make perfect. So, I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more on how that affected me. But yes, the literalness. Okay. Yeah. And again, to any structure, there is literalness. There's no guessing. It is measurement 6 inches, length, this, that. There's no in between. It's not gray. It's black and white.
Okay. So using terms like about or roughly, those are harder terms than to say exact specifications.
I grew up. Here's the thing: if you grow up and you want to learn how to do math, you have to learn how to guesstimate,
Yes, you do.
not be so you don't have to be exact. So I learned how to be real exact, and then when I needed to guesstimate, I learned how to guesstimate excellently,
Okay.
very well and be very close. I had a job as an estimator, and in training, they were throwing out figures, and I would answer before the calculator would answer. Now it wasn't Rain Man where you do 3,152 times 212, but it was quick enough where they looked back over at me and said, "Well, how'd you do that?" And I guesstimated. So I can.
Right.
It's yeah, there is a literalness to our life, a definition, a structure to it. Um, we have a harder time changing direction if we're supposed to go from point A to point B, and you throw something in between, a speed bump. We have a harder time changing. We have a harder time coming back to reality.
Okay. So later
Like,
in our conversation, we're going to talk about some tips for parents and for kids. Let's keep that in mind. Some of those
yeah,
tips that we're talking about now, when we put them all
exactly.
together again at the end, because I think this is good information, and some of it I've kind of known, but it helps to hear you saying it this way, because like I said, I've
Well,
worked more
there's
with children, and they can't tell me that. You kind of see the behavior, but you don't know, are you doing the right thing, or are you assuming the right thing?
right, because I'm the proof in the pudding in some cases where you're still mixing up the pudding. Okay, right? You're
Right.
still trying to make the pudding and create it so that it's perfect. And that's what you'll find with me. I learned when I was younger, I learned in order to understand people, I had to start speaking metaphorically. And if I spoke metaphorically and they said exactly, I'm like, then I get the idea. I understand what's going on. So,
Okay.
um, okay.
Okay, good. That's good information. All right, so
Yeah.
related to that is, and I know I asked you about this before, but I want to ask this for our listeners to hear. I've heard similar descriptions between descriptions of autism and descriptions of ADHD. Can you clarify? And I know you aren't a scientist coming in, you're not a doctor coming in, but in your understanding of it, can you give me a good idea of how I could distinguish between the two?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because I know autism, but I don't necessarily know ADHD. So, but the thing is, I did like what anyone else would do. I went and Googled it, okay, and I found out what the first visual things that came up. So if I go and Google, and I'll just quickly read it right off the thing here: attention deficit disorder, impulsiveness, disorganization, and problems prioritizing, poor time management, problems focusing on tasks, trouble multitasking, excessive activity or restlessness. There's six, seven, eight more. I don't have some of these things. Some of them I do. I've got great planning. Low frustration. No, I'm fine. Hot tempered. Used to have a hot temper, et cetera, et cetera. When I start to read signs and symptoms of autism right off the bat, delayed language skills, delayed movement skills, delayed cognitive. Now, maybe these could have been delayed because the kid had ADHD and wasn't learn right, couldn't
Right.
focus enough, right. So then you have hyperactive, impulsive. Now that kind of runs hand in hand with HD. But then there's lack of fear or more fear than expected, anxiety, stress, or excessive worry. See, so right, and that's not even what I said. The lack of communication skills. Does a person with ADHD communicate
So the
poorly? They
communication
might not
probably is
be
a
able
big
to
piece.
they might not be able to stay that long in a conversation, but that doesn't mean they can't say, "Hey, listen, I'm going to 7-Eleven, get myself a Slurpee," and keep carrying on. So there, to me, there's big differences. I didn't see anything about repetitive behavior on the list for attention deficit. Right?
Okay.
I'm repetitive behavior. I need my routine. So again, I don't. I'm not a doctor. And my opinions that I'm going to be stating here, opinions, suggestions, recommendations, are all based off my own experiences. But they're also based off of experiences that in which a brain that has done a lot of observing and sees how things have turned out over the years and how my experiences have done certain things. And now how when I mentor others, how I'm able to take those experiences and then apply them to what I'm doing and see the results there as well. So when you asked between ADHD and ASD, you can see when I started quickly, there was a total difference in what I read off. There was some similarities. Now I could have parts of ADHD. There's no doubt I could have some of that. But as an older person right now, I'm not as impulsive. I'm not disorganized. I don't have poor time management skills. I don't have problems focusing on tasks. But I do seem to, after about an hour and a half's worth of work, I do seem to need to get up and move around and do something different
Mm-hmm.
and then come back and do that again. So I do, for my ADHD maybe carries on for an hour and a half and then the mind goes away for a while.
Right. Okay. That is helpful. And looking at it that way, I think was good because the broader definitions were a good comparison of each other. So
Right.
so thank
Yeah.
you. The now ASD is autism spectrum
Disorder.
disorder. Okay, so the D is disorder, and I know the names have changed some through the years. So I want to make sure that I'm using today's terms as we're talking about this. And when I was going through college, so it's been a few years since then,
Right.
we would hear about autism. We would hear about Asperger's. Today, I'm not hearing about Asperger's as much. So, is there a difference between it, or is there another name for it now, or how are we referring to it, and what do they mean?
Well, okay. So in 2022, 2021 here, we have to realize that I kind of don't, I do care about labeling and I don't care about labeling. I will admit that I am on the autism spectrum. Okay. And that the part of the spectrum I am on is towards, excuse me, the more higher end or the end that doesn't need quite as much support. Okay. And at that end, sometimes it's referred to as high functioning autism,
Okay.
or it can be referred to as more precisely, maybe sometimes as Asperger's. I don't remember if there's a difference between the two. There might be minute, but Asperger's was named after a doctor, I believe, and I can't remember his exact definition. So autism now has become a giant an umbrella, and you have those that need a lot of support to function and live, and then you have those that don't. I'm one of those that doesn't. If I wanted to use a comparison right now of like the Rain Man comparison, we're both on the spectrum. Rain Man over here, he is only connected, the way I like to use it, is being connected to society or the ability to communicate or interact. To a percentage wise, and I've always said maybe 10 to 15%. He could do certain things, but he couldn't do other things. He couldn't live alone. He couldn't have a job. He couldn't drive a car. He didn't know how to use the toaster oven. Okay. I can do all those things. I can go to work, et cetera, et cetera. So if I place Rainman over here on the spectrum, he's on the lower end of the spectrum where I believe his connection is 12 to 15% to society. If we come over to here, where it's supposed to be Asperger's, we don't look at, but we're still, when we go home at the end of the day, we're still disconnected. I look at myself as being about 92% connected, and the other 5 to 10 or whatever, I'm not connected.
Okay.
It can be in things I say, things I do. I can get along, I can live alone, I can drive, et cetera, but there's still parts of me that my personality and or being on the spectrum has held me back for some reason. And it did, especially when it came to working as a handyman. The way I marketed myself. I walk into the office in just total painted clothes when I should have walked in more formally. I didn't advertise as enough because I didn't conform to what business was supposed to be like. So that, to kind of describe it to you quickly, hopefully quickly enough, the Rain Man to me description, how we're connected to society and our abilities, that's the broad end of the spectrum. Autism's all of it, Asperger's and or high functioning is way over here, and what we need minimal levels of support. But I still, from the age of 20 to 50, could have used support through the system, something we are definitely lacking at this day and age.
Right. And you're referring to that because that's during the time that before you were diagnosed.
That is correct.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm 56 now. I was diagnosed almost 10 years ago, in 2013ish, and yeah, the whole time before it, I had no clue why I felt the way I felt, why I did the things I did, why some people called me uncouth. I had no idea why, none, none whatsoever. And it's not like I'm a horse patootie either. I'm a nice guy with a big heart, so it did make sense sometimes why people look at me like a curious dog and go, "Why'd you just say that?" And that's the autism. I have the chutzpah at times to stand up and speak when others don't, and say what others are thinking when others don't want to.
Yeah.
Oops. And see how that can get you in trouble and then pull you out of society a little bit, right?
Right.
Hey, he's a little unique, a little weird. Maybe I don't want to be such a close friend. Maybe I don't want to be affiliated in some ways. So that holds me back. And
Right.
there's that 8% I'm talking about, that where I can do a bunch of things, but I can't run a business as a number one, but as a number two, I'd be fantastic. I'd be, because I'd make sure you didn't miss anything.
Right. I
Right?
could see as a child, especially, that socially that could be a bigger thing because, as you're saying, if you say something that's not considered appropriate to the others the same age, there's different stages of life where that's more important to people than other stages of life. And I'm thinking
Yeah, you're
middle
right.
school and high school.
Yeah,
You know
you're
when
right. I don't even think about what kind of a I could have been back then, but you're right. There could have been just two things I said in seventh or eighth grade that then took me on a path different than maybe I would have gone had I not said those things.
right,
Right?
right.
Yeah.
But you were probably just being honest and literal in what you were saying.
Yes.
That's
Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
if all of society would be as comfortable to say those things, maybe we'd all be happier. you know, where we're not comparing
Well,
each other as
listen,
much.
we I found that I'm a truth seeker, to tell you the truth, and so yeah, if you want to state that, and my name stands for being just and being fair. Okay, and then I'm thrown on the spectrum where we're known to be very truthful, right? We'll state our mind.
Right.
um, that could be good in a society or in a group that could handle it. It would be very good, and
Hmm.
we would all be able to handle each other because we'd all understand.
Right.
But yeah, it'd have its benefits, but then in some cases, maybe it wouldn't be that beneficial. I don't know. No, I don't know if we want to try it.
Yeah. True. True. I
Right?
think I think with age, I don't know about you, but I know for me, the older I get, the less it's important to me that I look good next to the person beside me.
Yeah, yeah. You're
It
right.
gets
You're right.
easier.
It is. It is. It's less important. You find that you learn to what your priorities truly are and what they should be and what they are. That's
Right.
what you learn, right?
Yeah.
Right. And looks are made for appropriate times. Otherwise, you don't need that hassle. Do something else that'll make you feel better
Yeah.
than what you're wearing at the moment or something.
Right. Right.
Right?
So just to finish that, the description there that we have, so some of the things that I've seen is a level, like a level one, level two, level three. Is that
Yeah.
so? That's the levels of the spectrum that they're referring to. Is that
Correct.
correct?
I believe that there are basically three levels of support that are needed. I would be like a level one where I needed minimal support to do some things, but like say if I was diagnosed out of high school and I was a level one, they would probably, and I'm not sure, doctors could tell me differently or whatever, they would probably recommend whatever what recommended the IEP that would be needed in that case.
Oh, we had just talked about the Asperger's or autism, but I did want to make sure that we mentioned the levels because some of the new parents being diagnosed now, they're going to hear levels and
Yeah.
they may not understand what that means.
Levels are going to mean how much support. To me, it means how much support is needed for this individual. There'll be three levels of support that might be needed. As I was trying to explain maybe before that, level one might be where this kid is able to function, gets great grades, but still can't do certain things. So maybe his support level is that he needs accommodations or he needs a counselor to help him get through the proper schooling to get to wherever he needs to be. That would be
Right.
like kind of a little bit of level one support. Okay,
Okay.
if you go back now, let's take the example of Rain Man. Let's imagine Rain Man in high school. He would be on the far end of level three. He would need a lot of support. Who's going to take him to school? He can't even get on the bus because he'll feel uncomfortable.
Right.
So I know I'm just going from level one to level three, but if I use those examples, you'll realize that that's kind of what is needed. Because as much as I know autism, I don't know everything about what's out there on how they describe autism. So the levels of support, I would have needed things. If I would have known, I would have been asking for things once I got out of high school and then once I got out of college to keep me in line to go where I need to go. I would ask for those
Right.
accommodations. A level two would need that, but he also might need to have someone in the school that's always making sure the paperwork's done all the time, right? But still able to do certain things, but still needs can't can't maybe submit certain things, can only read to a certain, can only get to a certain point. That might be level two. And like I said, if you go back to level three, you have Rain Man where he can only do three or four things. He needs to be dressed, he needs to do this, do that, and then he has
Right.
fits. He gets, sorry for lack of a better term, fits. If he doesn't get to do those things, so then his reactions, you're throwing off his routine, his structure for the day.
Right.
So you see where even that psychological psychiatric support is needed, where in essence, or you have to be, you're dealing with bigger problems in that case because there's a greater dependency. So it really, what it is how much support you're needed, and in some cases as a client, how much support, I mean, how much support, basically how much support is needed to get you, through the schooling, or to get you to wherever you want to be in the end, basically.
Well, and I think by giving us the example of a possible level 3 with Rain Man and a level 1 with you, how, and then thinking of spectrum, because you're looking at just
Right,
a
right,
variety of numbers in between.
right,
For me at least, it seems to help me kind of picture why I see so many different types of presentations whenever I
right,
meet different people. So there's
right.
somewhere between those two extremes, wherever they end up across that sliding scale.
But we can use, like, if we can use the thing too, is let's imagine that Rain Man, or my level of support would change if I was deaf.
Right,
Rain Man's level of support would change. He'd still be at probably the level 3, but if he couldn't speak, think of you need someone else to come in and be able to
right,
communicate for that person. So, and then imagine me. I might have been, if I was deaf, I might actually then have categorized into a level 2 because
yeah,
I needed more support. So you can see how worth it. And I can't break it down personally, but it's levels of support and what's needed. And it basically, like I said, it's 3 levels. Number 1 being the least amount, number 3 being the most amount of support needed.
right. Oh, perfect. I appreciate you explaining that, because that's the best I've ever heard it explained. So,
Okay,
so at least
good,
I
good,
don't know about our listeners, but for me, I feel like I have a better understanding now of
good,
what we're talking about too.
sure, sure.
And and it does seem to be a big unknown for a lot of people. So I'm hoping this is helping others to, even if they may understand it, you're giving some, I think, tools to be able to explain it themselves.
Well, and yeah. Well, if we use the example of when I was younger, I was in therapy at the age of 8. If I would have known what I was going through, I could have asked for accommodations for something like that. I could have. Um, it would have been easier to. What was I trying to? My point was trying to be was, if that would have changed then my level of support. Okay, if I would have. Here's my point. If we would have known that I was on the spectrum, therapy at the age of 8 would have been awesome level of support for me. If I know
All
now
right.
what could I've used would be better therapy, but back then my counselor referred to me as a tough nut to crack. They didn't know what, in 1974, what autism was really all about. It had only
Right.
been out there since like 1940 some odd, and not really studied. I mean, autism still is in its infancy. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. It's in of determining what it's all about.
Right.
Right.
Right. Well, you mentioned when you were 8, so let's talk a little bit about your childhood. You weren't diagnosed as a child, so did you have any difficulties in school?
Mm-hmm. No, I had no difficulties in school. I loved school, K through 4. My fourth grade teacher on the report card says loves challenges. In fourth grade, I was fourth grade. I was mentoring a second grader. I was able to get through enough work for school that I could go downstairs and mentor or tutor a second grader for a little bit. Um, and at the age of 8, I had memorized the entertainer from the Sting, that theme, and I played it in front of
Right.
our class. So, and then I loved sports, and I was, in the community, I was an awesome, excellent kid in sports. So there was really nothing showing any signs. But if I go back and say, okay, well, wait a minute, I was actually in therapy at the age of 8. Okay, I had gastrointestinal problems.
Mm,
To tell you the truth, at some point when I was growing up, I had stomach pains. And my mom took me to the doctor, and the doctor goes, "Have you been holding it in you're holding it in your gas?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't." And he's like, "Why are you doing it?" And I remembered, I think my mom saying, guys don't do that around women. So I literally took it. That's part of the thing, is I had gastrointestinal issues. Then I'm trying to hold off on these gastrointestinal issues. Why am I in therapy at the age of 8? Okay, why am I in therapy? Well, what I haven't told you is that when I grew up, is that I suffered physical abuse at the age of 4 years. I was 4 years old,
wow.
and I suffered it through my father. And I think it changed me in such a way. Now, it's if it, it's it's hard for me to describe this. If you look at the pictures before I was 4, it doesn't look like I have autism. I can look at the camera, I've got eye contact, et cetera, et cetera. But after the age of 4, things started to change. And while I'm 8 years old, I'm in therapy and I'm biting my nails at the age of 8. Okay, this is 1970. What am I worrying about? I'm not worrying about Ford being president. What's concerning Justin, especially
Right.
when he's running fun, doing great in sports? What's concerning? Well, it was the abuse that had occurred to me when I was 4. And by the time I was 8, it was catching up to me mentally, right? It was giving me signals and stuff like that. So, when we talk about recognizing certain things, if we want to talk about recognizing in your child, if you're not sure if the kid is on the spectrum, say it's through the age of 4 to 10, 12, look for excellences that are above the norm. Okay. Look for
Okay.
excellences that are above the norm. Even if the kid looks at the camera like I did, I was excellent. I mean, I was the best. I had up into 8th grade, I had the best penmanship around. I could forge letters and notes. I won spelling bee championships. I was excellent. Really, my excellence occurred all the way up to about the age of 13. So it didn't look like I was on the spectrum. But if we go back to the age of 8, the therapy, why am I there? Okay. What was I having? Gastrointestinal issues. And then I was biting my fingernails. And then right around puberty, right around 8th grade, I started feeling more, I started getting more fights and started feeling more anger. Okay. So I'm going to backtrack. What you have is an excellent kid growing up, but all of a sudden he's got gastrointestinal issues because he took something literally. He's biting his nails. What 8-year-old bites their nails before? Okay. Um, so look for that actually that weird. There's a spectrum there of excellences and then these weird insecurities. This guy, he doesn't fear it. He can excel at this. There's no insecurity there, but why is he feeling this way back here? Well, for me, it was like I said, how I believe my autism came along, and I believe it's kind of trauma induced. Events can change the brain. We know one
Right.
thing: events can change the brain. Matter if they really can. Did this event change my brain? Well, yeah, it had to have changed my brain because I became a different person. I became a different person. Would I still do the same things as I did if I wasn't on the spectrum? I still have genes that say, go ahead and do this, be driven, be ambitious. But I couldn't answer that. But so if I wanted to point out a few things, if you're not sure with your child, look for excellences, look for the person taking on challenges, look at them actually being bored from all the things, all the challenges. Sometimes if they're bored, it means because nothing else is mentally good enough to satisfy them right now. So if you're looking for the hidden person on the spectrum, those excellences, and then those little things that don't make sense that like show saying signs of anxiety, because all of us underneath suffer from a bit of anxiety, some to greater scales than others. So that's how my childhood was. It was fun. It was great. It was, and that's why I told you before, practice makes perfect. I learned all the way up to about the age of 13, 14. High school became a different place. Puberty became a different situation for me. And it's in high school where I think, I started to make the mistakes from being on the spectrum, maybe said the wrong things, didn't play politically, in the sports arena and stuff like that. I had a bad attitude as a freshman. I led the team in push-ups because I swore the most and got, and threw the bat the most. So there's signs of my anger issues coming out or being there, right?
Right.
So I don't want to keep backtracking. So I think what it is when the kid has no worries in the world, you'll see all the excellence is shining with some anxieties underneath that don't make sense. That might be the person on the spectrum. Okay.
Okay.
After that, you see this person that was excellent. Yeah, it's hard time to adjust, but how much further down do they go? And how could they be so good and then they really kind of stink? You know what I'm saying? But where that showed to me in high school, where that practice makes perfect, and nobody's perfect comes on, was that we had to run around the lake in high school, and for like long distance running. And the first couple times we ran around the lake, I came in second place, only behind a soccer player, and I didn't play soccer. Then the third, fourth, fifth time, he saw me fall behind, and the gym teacher even goes, Houcek, you're not even trying anymore. I wasn't trying. I didn't care like I used to care. I didn't have the same drive. I knew how good I was. But I didn't keep pushing myself to be great. Part of that is because the one thing I haven't said is mom and dad. I didn't have a dad from the age of 2 years. Didn't have a dad. My mom and dad got divorced. So inside all that is not having two parents with direction. My mom's grown up 1970 some odd, working at Allstate, trying to make a living with two
Right.
boys, one on the spectrum she doesn't know. So if you're a single parent, it's much more difficult. If you're if you're if you're married, that's great. You get more support. If you're a single parent, then pull in uncle this or aunt that to make there a greater amount of support, because if we're not supported, we will fail. Without our support, we don't necessarily know. We believe too much in ourselves and our convictions to necessarily believe that, okay, this is what I should do. Okay, I should, as a 19-year-old, I'm going to stop believing my dad, right? I got to stop believing mom and dad at some point. Well, I probably made the wrong decisions at that
Right.
age. Okay.
So again, like we may not remember all these tips when we get to the end,
Yes,
but I think this is a
exactly.
good one here that, I'm thinking even if you are a typical family unit with a mom and a dad and, there for the support, reach out and get some extra support coming in there too,
Right,
because you're going to need it depending on how much support your child needs. If your child needs level
right,
3 support, you're going to
right,
burn out if you're not getting support too.
right,
But reaching into that community, find out who's out there
right.
and bring them in to help you as well.
Well, and here's the main thing. What I mean by support is when you're in, it's all positive, it's all happy, it's all congratulating on the accomplishments, and it's all making sure that that person who's on the spectrum feels basically the same from every single one that's being supporting him. Okay,
Right.
that's if you get that, I think there's you will get the person, because you got to find our interests. Okay, you've got to make us like you for some reason. You got to make us trust you for some reason, because we trust
True.
ourselves more than we trust you.
Yeah.
Okay, we trust, like everyone does, but we really don't trust you, because we really believe we're right. We're so convicted at times. We have our convictions. So having that support, and what I've always said is, okay, even if you don't have a certain brother or whatever supported, at least whoever's doing it, it's all positive. You don't pick on it. There is no more negativity. It's all accomplishment based. It's all driven to be accomplishment based, successful, happy, productive. I find negativity is there's just no need for it. And I learned that as I was a sidewalker for an equine therapy place. I was sidewalking, and I realized that the instructor was trying to tell the client what they're trying to tell the client. And I made a comment and it was kind of too negative. And she goes, we don't talk negative around here. And I go, got it. And I immediately learned there's no nots, can'ts, and nevers. There isn't. There's none of those words. It's yes, we can do this. We will do this. Maybe not right now, but we're going to get this done.
Right.
And so when you talk about support, it can't just be me and you standing around. We also have to make sure we engage in that support. And that's why I said, if it's only a single parent, if you get an aunt or an uncle that's also complimenting the kid, patting them on the
Right.
back, we just want to be loved. We love you, but we just don't know how to show it. But we do want to be loved. So if we just sit there and go like this or don't like to be hugged, we like it. We do like it. We do. We do like it. It feels good. It feels good.
I'm sure there's a lot of parents listening right now who just took some encouragement from that because their 2 or 3
Yeah.
year old
Oh,
can't
yeah.
express that yet.
No, no, we do it. How can a son not love a mother that does everything for them? How can you not? Now, the son who has autism might not always agree with mother's decisions and the bitching might go back and forth, but in the end, the kid always comes back to the mom. The kid always comes back to the mom. So, yes, parents, understand that we love you dearly. We don't know how to say certain things. We just don't. We don't know when the timing's right or if it's wrong, but we do feel it. We do feel it. And if you find the right way, you can get us to admit it. You can get us to admit it. Definitely, no doubt about it. You can say, "You do love me, don't you, Justin?" And yes, I do. Yes, I do. But you see, you had to pull it out of me.
Right. Right.
So we do feel more than you think we do.
Well, so it's reminding me of my kids in probably the 12-year-old range
Uh huh.
when peers are more important than parents
Right.
and
Yeah.
may not always want to admit how they feel. Now, my kids, I was fortunate. They always have just had an open relationship there. But watching other kids at the same time, they
Mhm.
pulled away a lot during that time, and I could kind of see that same type of behavior. They still want it, but it's not cool to show it. So maybe if we can think of that this is a younger child who's feeling the same way, but they don't know how
Yeah.
to show it.
Yeah.
Not that I
I
don't
think
want
like
to, but I
whether
don't
you're
know
on the
how.
spectrum or not, whether
Yeah.
you're on the spectrum or not, I'm sorry. I'm still a little boy that doesn't know what I'm going through at the age of 12 or 13,
Right.
so regardless. And then as we get older, we're prone to not listen quite as much to them because we feel more dependent. So it's a very difficult situation, regardless if you're on the spectrum or not.
Right.
Um, but that's where I think where I made the mistake because without having a father around, I started making my own decisions. My mom was just like, as long as he's alive and healthy, right, I'm happy.
Right.
As long as he has some direction and he talks to me, I'm happy. So that's where, and I didn't have an uncle around. I didn't have other things around. So it was really me leading the way and alone at the age of 18, if the frontal lobe is just starting to develop,
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I was doing the best I could with what I thought was going to work. And in business wise, trying to do my own business, I could stay busy working for somebody, but trying to do my own business, I couldn't. I just didn't conform in the right way because of my autism.
Right. No, you were talking about in school when you in younger school,
Hmm.
that you did really well. I mean, you were
Hmm.
excelling in everything. It sounds like. Did you have a lot of friends when you were younger?
Yeah, I had friends. Part of it was the fact of where I lived, and I lived in Northern Illinois in a town called Libertyville, and we were close to everything. The fire department, the bank, the park, the 7-Eleven where all the Slurpees were and where the video games came to be.
Yep.
So yeah, and the thing is that the way my brother and I we were kind of like people came to our place and they're like, "What do we do?" And then we became the leaders in some cases,
Okay.
and we determined or helped determine what was going to go on because we also had a big yard. We could play in this yard. So whether it was that was given to me or just this general drive to be, yeah, I had friends. I had friends on both sides of the tracks, the jocks, the burnouts. I had girlfriends, prom, non-prom. I had the personality, like I said, if I spoke metaphorically in the right way, I could talk to this jock and I could talk to this girl over here. Friends weren't an issue because when you're growing up and you have the good penmanship and you've got a spelling bee, you have other kids looking up to you. And it
True.
doesn't matter what you say, right? But I realized it didn't matter what I say. I won the spelling bee. So I had at least 5 nerds that loved me
Right.
for a while. Right? And then I had the respect of certain jocks because if I played sports with them, they go, well, wait a minute. I just thought he could throw the football and be a catcher and a pitcher, but actually he could spell these words. So
Right.
that wasn't a problem. In high school, it wasn't a problem. Having friends in high school wasn't a problem. In high school, my problem was where my temper started to come out, where I started I started feeling that if you came within an arm's length of me, I kind of wanted to punch you in the face. I didn't want you near me. I wanted you away from me.
Okay. So some
And
space
where do I
issues.
get that from? Where did I get that from? If I was okay, so if we grow up a nice kid, normal, blah, 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 where did I get the chances are I got that from mentally or subconsciously going back to those abused days and saying,
Mm,
if you couldn't trust your father, who can you trust here? Who can't you trust? It's,
right.
stuff like that. So that's where happiness started to dissolve. Other interests came along, but anger also came, and I think maybe poor decisions based off of anger and thinking I'm independent and I know better. Uh, so if your kid is doing excellent up to getting out of 8th grade, gets into high school, and it seems like the top has stopped spinning or the thread is unwound, and there's no other things going on, no other dramatic situations, and no other lost friendship here, then you have to start thinking internally what's going on inside, right? Why has
Right.
this kid gone from excellent? So if we're trying to find tips, signals, et cetera, through the ages, why is the kid falling off? I started falling off, and I had a ton of talent. I had a ton of talent. I fell off. Why'd I fall off? Lack of direction, my own thinking, and I think anger issues, et cetera, et cetera. How much of it was autism related? I don't know. I can't, I can't define. I can't look back and say it was, but I
Right.
can tell you the problems that I went through at those ages.
Well, I think
Okay,
it's important that we keep in mind that no matter what other issues kids are facing, they're still kids. So they're still going to go through the normal stages of
correct,
changes through life and the insecurities that come with those different changes,
correct.
in spite of whether they're visually impaired, hearing impaired, autistic, whatever the issue is. Those are just, they're still going to be part of their life.
Correct. You look at it this, I think, a good way of looking at it is that if I have a hard time coming back to center at times if you interrupt me or if you change something. So let's say a kid's going along and he's doing well in school and he's staying centered. And all of a sudden something unravels in the car, like I used to say, the car starts spinning on the snow, it starts spinning on the ice. How much does it spin? How long does it spin for? And then when does it recenter itself? When a kid go, we all have normal situations, circumstances growing up, right? Well, what happens with this kid? He gets out of high school and all of a sudden he really unravels. What happened to Justin, straight A's up to the age of 13 or 14? And then now it's C's, D's, and then he barely makes it through high school. All these brains and he barely makes it through high school. I was spinning, okay, and I ever centered myself back, okay. So that's the one way I like to look at it is mentally. If we all go through these things, if the kid changes so drastically, I think like in some cases that well, I did, and there's no other reasons why, then you have to think it could be the spectrum. Okay,
Right.
because I can't come back to center that fast. Things have changed too much. Um, Again, I'm not a doctor, and I'm only speaking through my own personal circumstances, my beliefs in some cases, and how I describe things. In some ways, like I said, that way you can understand how I can react. The car spinning metaphor can be done differently in the fact of, let's just say that I'm supposed to pick you up at 4:30 and I'm supposed to take you to grandma's house and I'm supposed to be there at 5. And I say, okay, great. I get in the car, I get to your house and you go, we got to stop at the bank. My car started spinning. Now, how fast do I come back to straightening out? Okay. See, now we're going to the bank is only this big, but if it was grade school to high school, how fast do I come? Well, we're going to the bank before okay, we can do that because I realign my time in my brain and say, okay, it's going to take how long? We'll still be there on time. Okay, come back we can do this. And I get normal. Where's your bank? Okay, where's the ATM? Let's go. Boom. You
Right.
got it. Let's go. And we're done. So
Okay.
it's how it's those on the spectrum. It's how we come back from certain things and how we're hit and how we kind of go back to center, realigning ourselves to back what was normal life prior to. So I'm using that as my high school experiences. You can use that for your kid in some cases. How long, if every other kid wouldn't have an issue and your kid does, and there's no other issues underlying, then maybe he's on the spectrum. Maybe he's
Right.
just on the spectrum. Okay. I like to use the process of elimination to determine things. And so that's the way my doctor determined with me. She goes, I tested you for everything. And autism is the only one you fulfill. She goes, you don't fulfill any of this, you fulfill this right here. Process of elimination. So with your kid, and that's the way I used to when I raised my child. There's usually 5. When a kid's crying, they usually need one of 5 things, maybe a couple of them. If you eliminate the eating, the pooping, the whatever, the this or that, you'll find out why your kid is being bothered, and then you can go forward and correct it.
Okay, so we talked earlier about that you were diagnosed as an adult, in fact, just in recent years. So, what led to your diagnosis?
In March of 2013, my wife filed for divorce with me. And one of the main complaints was, I've just never really understood you. I kind of don't still get you, Justin. And so I decided that I'd move out for a little bit, a few days. She then decides to stay out. So I then go over to my brother's place and I live with my brother for a while. And I'm sitting in his garage and I go, what is my problem, dude? What is it? And he goes, Justin, people like you. He goes, you just don't know how to relate. And my ex had said the same thing. You just don't know how to relate. And with that being the case, that's where so that occurs, and I'm sitting there thinking, all the while my ex and my 2 daughters are going online trying to throw in symptoms, and they say, hey, looks like you might have Asperger's, a form of autism. And they said, go get tested. I go, okay, so I will. So I went and I got
Interesting.
tested. I get divorced. I get the filing for divorce in March 2013. It's then I'm out. My brother and my ex make that comment. my kids do the research. I go see the doctor, and in June, I'm diagnosed as being on the spectrum. So, um, what led up to it was finding out from someone who was my brother, and then from my ex, someone who had with me for 17 years, and I'd known 7 prior. I said, okay, these two people know me the best.
Right.
And so I went, and like I said, I got tested, and I've got a mild form. I'm still on it. It's not like I'm real close to falling off it. I'm into it enough, just enough. And they have your spouse or companion take the same test with you. I mean, not at the same time, but they so that way they can compare what your views are compared to what your
Right.
spouse's views are. And so I was very similar, but we both kind of ended up where, yes, I'm on the spectrum. So that's what led up to my diagnosis. If you want me to move on to the second question, is why do I know why it was not recognized earlier? Because I was good enough to do just about anything except for those quirky things, or the non-conforming things in business, or maybe to, like you say, sometimes we get focused on something too much. That um, there was that might have shown the signs, but really, why I wasn't recognized earlier. Because I could do if there was no signs, I could do certain things. I had a job, I could hold a job. I could work for my brother. I ran my own business for a while.
Right.
Where was the problems? There was no problems except for when I came home. How did I react when I came home? Well, I didn't love the way I should have loved. Okay. Or if we
Okay.
don't know how to show love, I would have a tendency that my wife would be in the kitchen, and I'd walk by her and I go, I just want to grab her and hold her as I'm walking towards do the dishes or something. And I'd walk right by her instead of coming back and going, nice to see you, and grabbing that
Right.
way. Um, my response time with my children was, before I was divorced, was, Daddy, can you come help? Hold on, hold on, hold on. When my ex told me my problems were, is we got closer, I got better at it. Come on, Daddy, when are we gonna? And I'd be like, I'll be right there. But so there was the ways that I communicated that way, and how I loved. Like I said, when I would go to work, I didn't realize you have to keep marketing to people to make them remember that you're out there. So I would market once, and then I wouldn't get back to them for another year or something, not follow up on anything I'd
Mm.
send out. And or the other thing would be, like, I go into the office, I always be dressed in painter's clothing, never looking fantastic or anything like that. So how I presented myself. And then if someone says, this is how you do business, I'd be like, well, that's not how I want to do business. I wouldn't do anything illegal, I think, but I just wouldn't do it the simple way. And one of the greatest things my father-in-law ever said to me, and if you can't relate to business, was, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Keep it simple, stupid. We have a tendency, those in the spectrum, to make things more difficult at times. Whether, it's much thought or it's whatever it might be, we have a tendency to make things difficult. So the signs weren't really there. You could have just looked at me as a normal husband who, came home from work, was exhausted, wanted to spend time on his phone, hold on, kids, I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. There was no difference. There was no way to see it. There
Right.
was, there was no way to see it. So that's why I wasn't recognized, because you got to hang out with me to realize, whether or not I'm on the spectrum. It's not that. That's the weird thing, is there's a lot of us out there that haven't been diagnosed as truly beyond the spectrum. Okay, there's others that have been included on the whole spectrum umbrella, but are they true people on the spectrum? I don't know. I know that those things, along with my issues that I have, the way I get real uptight on the inside when it comes to breaking my patterns, my routines, and stuff like that. Don't
Mm-hmm.
mess with me in time. You tell me 5 o'clock, you mean 5 o'clock. Okay? Don't mess with me. So those issues, those aren't ADHD. Those aren't normal issues. Those are someone that's wired a little differently,
Right.
and they expect things a different way because they're wired that way. So that's how you can't tell that I was on the spectrum. You really couldn't.
So I find it really interesting that your kids and your ex-wife came to that conclusion before you even did the testing. So
Yeah.
so
Well,
they
they
had
wanted to know what the problem was. What could this man exactly? Why is this man the way he is? This does, it didn't make sense. So you've got to look for an answer, right? They had to look
Right.
for an answer, and they found it right off the bat. They found exactly what it was right off the bat.
What difference did it make when you got an official diagnosis?
Uh, a huge difference. And I would recommend to anybody to get the diagnosis, regardless of age. For me, it answered so many things when I look back in life of why I did certain things, who I was, what I was all about. The sooner you get the diagnosis in life, the better prepared you will be for the future. Okay. The longer you don't know what you're dealing with, the longer you're not dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with. So the sooner you find out, the better it is. I'd rather know and be prepared than to not know and wonder what the hell's going on. The sooner a person finds out if their son or daughter or child is on the spectrum, the sooner they can take care of, get things in order, the sooner they can find out what the awesome talent or talents are of that child and focus their life to say, okay, you got to go do this, but this is where your focus is at. You got to do this part of school, but this is where your talent is at. So yes, get a diagnosis. Get a diagnosis. Even if you have to wait on a waiting line, then put it on. I would love to be able to find a way that, through, because I do some pushing. I try to do dealings with some legislation up here, trying to lobby or get others to co-sponsor. And that would be something that I would want them to shorten up the time span of determining if someone's on the spectrum. They say it takes months or years sometimes. They're on a waiting list.
Wow.
Get on the waiting list, keep on looking for other places, get on their waiting lists. Look to the government, look to ways of funding resources. If not the government, then maybe a nice website that is centrally located that has a lot of these resources of that nature. So yes, I would say, what difference did it make? It answers a lot of questions. It gives you direction. Okay.
Right.
It allows you to know what to improve. For me, it helped me realize what I was doing wrong. So it makes a huge amount of difference to answer that question. Get it.
And along with that, how unusual is it for someone not to be diagnosed until they're older?
Autism on the Rain Man side's a lot easier to see than, say, someone else who's kind of caught and lost. I think it's there's more out there than you know of people like us on the spectrum. They could be 26, they could be 36, they could be 56. If you're living to be 50, you learn how to hide certain things. You learn how to get around life and its ways and manners, and how to, if you don't want to be seen doing something weird, then you know how not to do it. Like, I don't want to walk the curb in front of a huge crowd at a parade, but I'll walk the curb to my neighbor. So one of the things my therapist told me when I said, well, she said, how did you face these issues when you were younger growing up? I said, well, I just grew up and approached them and attacked them. And I solved them as I came along. She goes, well, you adapted quite well. That's how those like me on the spectrum, where you can't really tell, because we learn how to adapt quite well. We're smart enough to learn how to adapt quite well, but we're also saying, we're who we are. We're not perfect. And we're going to still kind of stay this way, so to speak. And so I'm very aware of certain things and want to change certain things too,
Right.
whether it be for myself, because I learned from being married how to stay married. And then I learned from the divorce what I did wrong being married. And I'm learning to change those things, because if I move on a relationship, I don't want to end up the same way I did being married, doing the same things.
Right.
We as men, have a hard time. We have a tendency, we mature a lot slower than women do through life, if I can put it that way, without scolding the men too much. Okay. And we'll just keep it at that. And we'll move on to the next question. So that's why you can't see it, because we get to a certain level, we adapt, we get to a certain level. And if our spouse or wives just tolerate who we are,
True.
There's no problem. What's the issue?
Right.
Right. That's the issue. So.
Okay. So with that, what changes have you made since you were diagnosed?
Since I was diagnosed, I've learned to communicate. First of all, to communicate better, which is one of our huge issues that we have. It's communication, expressing more, trying to, instead of resolving issues as quick as possible with your spouse, companion, friend. Don't allow it just to sit there and fester, and then a new one come up, and then you've got two issues to deal with. Because then what you do is you have an ongoing thing going. So communication. I demand it now. If there's a problem, let's talk about it. If we're too angry to talk about it right now, it's got to be talked about tomorrow morning, but it has to be resolved. We don't just sweep it under the carpet and say, okay, I'm
Right.
going to get used to it. I'm not going to do that. So I changed that. I learned how to, by watching, I did a couple things. I learned how to be more sympathetic and have more empathy for others. I used to be the kind of person where someone would say, okay, well, such and such did this. And I'd be like, well, how can we fix it? Where I should have said, are they okay? Is everything all right? And then how can I help, instead of just how can we fix it?
Right.
Or, oh, you did this. Well, just get over it. Who cares? That used to be my attitude. Like, it's not a big enough thing in life to worry about. Now I actually give it a little bit more, give it a little more credence to whatever someone's issues might be. Okay. Because
Okay.
I've realized, what are they thinking? And it doesn't matter, Justin, sometimes if you don't believe them, if you want to understand them, you have to listen to what they're thinking. So I changed my communication. I've started watching the Undercover Boss TV show a little bit, because what I liked was seeing what I thought was true human reaction to being gifted or given something when they had nothing by another human being.
Hmm.
Okay, that helped a lot. But then there was this one thing that got me, that just made me cry. And it was a kid named Sam Tagelson. He's out of California, and he was, this is like 2014, 2015. He had a heart condition. Contacted Make-A-Wish Foundation and said, I want to play with the San Jose Sharks. Okay, the hockey team out there. So they hooked up this whole thing. They set it up. They had him sign a contract for a day.
Oh,
Okay.
nice.
I'm watching this, and hopefully I won't get too choked up. I usually kind of get choked up or a little bit water next.
Right.
Signing the contract, going out, skating with the guys, them all tapping the sticks. And when he has a chance, he's sitting there and he gets off the ice and he's crying, holding his hands up, saying thank you to everybody. I mean, I lost it. And even now, when I think about it, I lose it. He helped me cry. He helped me learn how to cry. He was a man that was disabled. He was a person with a hidden disability, a 19-year-old kid with a heart condition.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, I bawled, and I bawled. It was just so much. But it helped me so much. And I actually finally reached out to him. We haven't talked yet, but I reached out to him via Twitter. And I said, you made a difference in my life. I'd love to have a chance to speak with you. Now, I still think he's still alive. His life's doing, I think, kind of well. He still loves hockey. I haven't pestered him or nothing like that, but I still want to thank him personally. I did thank him through Twitter, but I want to be able to do something like this and thank him. So those were the main things that I learned, was how to communicate better, how to understand that people do feel, and that your answers, that answer isn't necessarily the answer. It's make sure they're okay first.
Right.
And that's where it changed me the most. I still am a stickler for time, but now if you're hurt, I'll give you a little extra time. And I'm learning how, with living with a girlfriend and her spontaneity, I'm learning how to deal with my own patience inside. I'm now understanding my patience and how not to do the spinning at times, or adjust better, explain what's going on. So that's one of the greatest benefits that have come out of me. Now, I might remember in the future and maybe have to send you a note later and say, plus this, but those were huge for me.
I could see where knowing now what some of the triggers are, what some of the natural responses are for you that may not fit in socially with the next person. If you can understand that, then you can have that talk with your girlfriend where she can understand too, that it isn't that you're trying to push her away. You just need this to be in place for it to be right now. And
Correct.
Without knowing that, you can't tell that.
No, and she's been the most patient person I've dealt with. She's been a girlfriend of 5 years. A heart of gold, extremely patient. She's taught me patience with her own flaws, but we all have them. Me too. So, and I love her to death for the fact of that she's tolerated me and learning how to accommodate me. And like they always say, the neurotypicals have to learn how to accommodate the non-neurotypicals. Well, okay, but we should also, if we have the capability, also learn to understand the neurotypicals better and appreciate them as well. So, A lot of us have the capability. A lot of us want to be better, do better. We just sometimes don't know how to do it. I want to be a better human being. So how do you do that? By showing more sympathy and more empathy. And you know what? It's all worth it. I feel better for doing it. So I was missing out on the good feelings because, these are good feelings of tears. These are the good stresses in some cases that I'm enjoying. Okay. And if they're a bad stress, it's still at least, if I can come up with then, if I used to be a handyman. I used to solve problems. So if someone's got a problem, I'll comfort them better, and then I'm going to solve your problem. No, I'm still going to solve your problem. So, yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
All right, so I'm going to change gears a little bit here. We
Yeah,
talked earlier about, because we've kind of hit on some different advice as we've gone through, and I
yeah.
don't know if we can remember to recall all of them right now or not. But what advice comes to mind that you would give parents of young children who have recently been diagnosed with autism?
The first thought that always comes to mind is find their talents. Find the talent, okay? Because then you can pursue whatever it is they're supposed to be. He'll still have to take science. He'll still have to take history, or she will, or whatever. But once you find what that talent might be or what the capabilities might be, you might then know where to place that child. I could have been placed at a gifted thing at the age of 6, 7, or 8. I just stayed at normal school. I probably could have gone gifted, where I would have been maybe enhanced, not as bored, et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing is find their talents. If you can afford an assessment test of some sort, find out what they're going to be good at. Okay, that's the first thing I would say. Whether they're 4 or whether they're 12, definitely do that. That's the thing. Number 2 is understand that the child's fears are greater than your understanding, and that your
Mm,
child's anxieties are greater than you think might be a normal level of anxiety, fear, etc. As much as we're convicted on some of our beliefs and what we think, we have our huge insecurities as well. Support and positive support. I guess those are the 3 main
yep,
things that I would say. The first things, I can only state so many. A doctor might say, okay, get evaluated, but the doctor is going to say, make sure that find the plan, evaluate, assess, evaluate, right? You know where I'm coming from. You were a teacher
right.
before, so you know that there's a
But I
good.
find that of the people that I've interviewed so far, whether they were the older kids or adults, the advice that all of you are giving me, I think, is better than what I would get from a doctor, because you're living this life. You've
Right.
experienced it, and you can speak from a point of experience, and that's
Correct.
different than a textbook.
Correct. I
So,
actually, you made me remind myself of something. Right around 5th grade, I started batching my life into 4 to 5 year periods because it was what I was used to from school. So 5th through 8th, I remember I'd have fears. And when I was going into high school, I'd have fears. And then when I came out of high school, ready to go to college, I'd have fears. Not the
mm,
fears we all have, but other fears of not seeing my future because it's not structurally black and white right now,
right,
not seeing it. So the fears, they came as I look forward for the next set of 4 to 5 years.
interesting.
Okay, and that is one of those things, like I said, where the fears come in and and like I said, the underlying anxieties, et cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah, well, I'm glad you're kind of getting. I'm glad you like that perspective because it's the true perspective. I don't know. Other people have different fears. You can meet someone else on the spectrum, and they freak out if there's too much thing going on. I don't really
Right.
freak out if there's too much going on. I can go to a loud rock concert. I can do certain things, but I do have a thing where I can't stand tearing of paper around me. It's like, don't tear the paper. I can open up the envelope, but when my girlfriend tears her receipts, I go, shut up, stop it. So I have these little ones. I've learned to adapt,
Right.
but I've got these little pet peeves.
It,
So
it would be similar to people hearing nails on a chalkboard.
yeah, yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
That's easy,
But
but
for
don't tear
someone
paper around.
else, it's not easy for them.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, we do have and we have levels of sensitivities to certain things as
Right.
well. I mean, I can tolerate a lot of stuff, because again, in some cases, I've seen a lot of stuff. But yeah,
Yeah. All right. So what advice would you give to children? Maybe they're a little bit older and they've been diagnosed maybe for years, or they've just gotten diagnosed, but they're getting to the point where they're more aware of what's happening now. Any advice for them as far as knowing how to kind of adjust and get along and make friends and all? You have any advice for those kids?
if a child or if someone was diagnosed right now, whether it was 12, 13, 14, 18, 20, whatever, my first thing is don't shut up, communicate more to get more. If you think
Mm.
you need support, ask for the support. Okay. Too many people, in some cases, your mom's going to always ask and wonder. Those who are just diagnosed at the moment, um, you kind of have to ask for what you need. Okay. Be expressive. Um, and then remember another thing, there's really nothing wrong with you, because remember, nobody's perfect here. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with you. And just because you might not be good at this doesn't mean you're not good at the rest of parts of life and living the rest of parts of life. I'm pretty good at living life, except for I have a hard time running my own business at times, or sometimes say the wrong words. But I'm not a failure, not a total failure, nothing like that. So, and again, once if you're a child at the age of 12 or 13 and you don't know what you want to do, find a way to figure out what you do want to do and find the happy part of what you want to do and make it the productive part, because you need to find that in life in order to succeed no matter what. So find something that'll pay for things, make sure it's happy, um, and be open about it. And I think that's the greatest thing, is those on the spectrum need to be open about what they need.
When I first found your information, I found that you have a business called ASD With Me. What is that? Tell me about that.
ASD with me was started in 2019 when I was talking with my therapist, and I realized that as much as I liked helping people as a handyman, I thought I had might have a way to relate to other people on the spectrum. And so I actually sat in at a group, a support group, and found out that I was able to get breakthroughs with a couple of the people in that room. That, along with some of the volunteer work I had done, I said, listen, I just want to help people. Okay. And so I basically started a business after I realized that how can somebody walk into a room, sit down with a group of 10 or 12, 18 to 30 year olds, listen to two of them, have no degree, and figure out, get the guy to break through. What did I do? I either made the person feel comfortable, I asked the right questions, or I just knew how to relate in some way. That all clicked, and I just said, okay, I want to do this. I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. I know I'm supposed to help people, and I was for handyman for almost 30 years, but I'm supposed to help people. And the funny thing is that so I decided then to start ASD with me. I went out and I got training to become a BCAT, which is a board certified autism technician,
Okay.
which is kind of like an RBT, registered behavior technician, but it's got more of the focus, and I had to learn more about being on the spectrum. So that I basically incorporated that. I did that to get a title, to get some respect, because it's pretty much Justin Houcek, no PhD, no nothing. It's just some dude. Um, so that's what it was. I put myself out there, and then I just started to reach out and make people aware. Really started was I said, listen, I have an ID decal system I'd like to do for vehicles, okay, for first responders and those on the
Oh,
spectrum.
right.
So I started doing that, and I produced something like that, and then I ran into I started doing that, and then I started meeting up more with the first responders, giving them that card, and then I started reaching out to the police forces. So up here, there's a 5 county area and about 2 million people, maybe three total with the city of Chicago. So I reached out to the police officers and said, "Hey, listen, we need CIT training for police officers. CIT training is crisis intervention training,
Okay.
especially for those that are on the spectrum." So I saw the need for that. So I reached out to the communities, 170 police chiefs. I then reached out to the mayors, 170 mayors, and said, listen, make sure your community has this. It's a lawsuit in the waiting if you don't. So that's what kind of fueled me and got me going and rolling along to pick up steam in order for me to become an advocate and speak up for. And so I did with the first responders. I then was able to go through, I contacted a senator up here who's trying to pass legislation which would provide a voluntary database for those with invisible disabilities to those first responders and allow them to see what the issues could be with this person. And so I contacted our state senators and pushed that along, got more sponsors to sign on.
Nice.
So My objective is to be the voice up here in Northern Illinois. I find that or like a central locale of, if not, I am here to serve those on the spectrum in any way, shape, or form that I can. And I will do it through mentoring, consulting, talking to a parent, speaking in front of people for first responding. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That is what ASD with me does, is it speaks up for those on the spectrum. It will also speak up for those with invisible disabilities, obviously, because there are I don't want to call them comorbidities, but sometimes a person on the spectrum is hard of hearing. Sometimes needs certain technical,
Right.
so on and so on. Excuse me. So, in a nutshell, again, I use the word nutshell. That's pretty much what ASD with me is about. Just basically in general, I
So
guess.
it's more than just working one on one with a client. You're doing more
Yes,
than
and
that.
yes. I do have a few clients that I'm mentoring right now. One of them is down in Lower Illinois. So it's not a lot of seeing him. It's more being there for him, being a friend, and kind of texting him at times, talk if he wants to talk. He doesn't want to talk too much. I have other ones that were one of the guys, I kind of just do what he wants to do. We do it once or twice a month.
Okay.
I have another guy, so I do the mentoring as well. I do that, and I kind of fit. My objective when I do that is to see if we fit, then try to pull things out of them that they haven't done before if possible, even if it's minor advancements. Also, then enlighten the parents to what the kid's feeling, why he doesn't want to do things, why he does, how he responded. I try to bring out, like I said, the things when I mentor the people, the kids, the clients. I try to bring out, let them do what they want to do, bring it out, do it with them a lot. But then if I want something done, I get to ask for something a little bit later. So I'll do 4 things with you, but then if I want to do something, we do the 5th thing with me. Okay. So it's not,
Right.
I'll give. And in time, as they trust, things go one on one. They should become one on one if he's growing and I'm. So yeah, I'll push on my own to do looking for legislation I can support, which is
Mm-hmm.
what I'm working on now. I do my mentoring. Consulting is more of like the life coaching, in which I mentor the kid, but I life coach the parent.
Right.
I can tell the parent how a kid feels when he feels it. I can tell the parent when they should stop pushing the kid because he's starting to lose it internally. I can tell the parent in some cases, I just did this yesterday. Okay, here's something I did. I told a parent to stop. I never done this. I said, "Mom, please stop." And I'm like, "You're frustrating him." And she's like, "I'm just trying." I go, "I understand what you're trying to do." I go, "And I'm not trying to be out of line." I go, "But right now and the kid goes, Mom, I'm frustrated. Please stop." So she stopped. Here's the other thing. So, I didn't want to be out of line. This kid was telling a story about a person, and I had my head down and I'm listening to tell the story about this person. And he says an expression, and I look up to him and I said, "That's the first time you've ever had that thought in your brain, isn't it?" And what it was that he wanted to make me something earlier, 20 minutes ago, 20 minutes earlier. He goes, "I want to make you something. What are your favorite colors?" So he was thinking about making something for me. And he was thinking about making something for his mom. 20 minutes later, I can tell you, I put my head down. He's trying to say something and he's stammering through these words. And I said to him, he goes, "I think I'm going to make this person the same thing I want to make you guys." And I go, "Was that the first?" I go, "You just thought of that just 2 minutes ago, not 20 minutes ago, when you were talking about making it for me and making it for your mother." I go, "You just thought of that, didn't you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And the mom's like, "How did you tell?" I go, "Because he'd never said it before. But the way he stammered through, once he finished, it was the first time he'd ever thought of it. I was able to determine that he had never thought of it until that moment, because I listened to how he communicated,
Right.
right? How he communicated that I'm going to make it for this person as well. Now, to some, that might not mean anything. To me, if I can sit there with my head down, listen to the kid speak and say, this is the first time he's ever thought this and now he's saying it, I think I know something. Because I've stammered through things
Right.
before, and it was a brand new thing that I've never. And for us to state something brand new, most of the time you hear them describing this person the same way, the same way, the same way. They start to grow when you hear a new sentence come out of them about that person, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what this kid did. was he had a first thought of it. He goes, I'm going to make it for this person. When we went back to signals, signs, ways I can help a parent, I know mentally, in many cases, I'm not perfect, but I think I know the degrees of the intensity, what's bothering us, whatever you just did, why it bothered us, why we unravel at times. I'm pretty good at that. And I've been able to do it with the same people I'm telling you with, say, this is why this happened. And if she didn't do this, this never would happen. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I guarantee you it. And I go ask. And that's exactly what the answer would be. It's exactly what I said. So I'm not perfect. And it all depends on this person, the client's willingness to talk. Okay, I could have said, I could have asked him over and over, you just thought of this. If you never answered me, I never know.
Right.
I pulled it out of him and said, come on. Because I think he also realized that things will change or things will do if he makes us aware of it, that he wants to do this. Otherwise, he's not going to get done. You don't state it. We can't read. Well, you can't read your mind, but yeah. So back to a benefit, and that kind of goes along with, you said, describe a typical appointment or a session. Sometimes I'll pick up a kid from school, take him home, sit with them, talk. Sometimes I will go take a kid BB gun, out in the field, shooting or something like that. Sometimes I sit there with their doctor, tell them what I'm doing, make sure I'm in line, talk with the parents with the doctor. Every time those are most of what my sessions can be about. The objective is to have the person grow, develop, make life happier, easier inside that home. Okay.
Right.
So describe a typical appointment or session. They vary. Sometimes I'll sit there 1 hour with the kids, and I'll do an hour with the parents saying, okay, I've evaluated this, blah, 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 blah. Here's what I see going on. Oftentimes when it comes to what I like to do is, like, if someone's introducing, if they want me to meet somebody, I will sit there and spend an hour talking with the parents, or maybe even with the person that's on the spectrum. Okay, a phone call, Zoom meeting, whatever. Then if they like me, I'll spend another hour with another call or whatever with them, determining, getting to know them better, saying, okay, this is what I'm finding. Do you agree? Then what I do is I say, okay, listen, I can move forward. And from this point, and that's actually where I start to, actually the charges start to come in, start to become appropriate or whatever. So what I try to do is give 2 to 3 hours of basically making sure that I know what's going on, that it's a perfect fit for us. I then write things up and say, this is my proposal. This is what I plan on doing. This is how I want to get things done.
Right. Okay.
So that's how a session goes was how a certain session goes. How I meet and propose certain things to these people is that way. If someone says, my kid is, let's say out of this, we get someone that communicates with me and say, listen, I'm doing things well, but what are your thoughts on such and such? How do I have them stop reacting this way? I can kind of give you an initial thing, but if I don't know that child and his daily life or what he kind of is used to doing, then I can't really totally evaluate it.
Right.
But I can sit there and say, this, from my experiences, this is what helped me. This is what didn't work. And I'm a man who has taught from my failures, which I think sometimes are better than teaching from successes. When you hit the bottom, you've got to learn how to get way up here. Instead of just arriving here, sometimes you here, you have to learn your way back to the top. So I learn from my mistakes. That's how I mentor, is from my mistakes. So that my objective isn't for me to be still teaching this kid X amount of years from now. I want that child or person independent,
Right.
but I'll always be there if they ever need something, So, that's my objective, is to and also to see what do the parents want? What do they want out of this? And then how can I help them achieve that? That's kind of, I know I'm kind of asking some of the questions that are on there that we kind of talked about. But that's how the session goes, how they get in, and
Yeah. How do the clients get in touch with you?
If I was a better marketer, I'd have more ways of describing how to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
But
Why don't
if
we
you're
word
able-
it this way? If someone that's listening to this wants to get in touch with you, do they go through your website? How do they get in touch with you?
You could do it through my website, asdwithme.com. You could do it, you could email me directly at Justin Houcek, JustinHoucek, at asdwithme.com. I also have a LinkedIn profile in which if there's some business people that want to see, whatever on there, there's that possibility. Um, and I can be contacted by phone, 847-721-6217. But I prefer, if you're going to call me, to text me first, because that way I can then tell you what I can guarantee you whatever time you need, instead of just trying to give you what you need at the moment you call on me, and I might be in the middle of who knows what.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we put in the show notes your email and the website and not the phone number,
Yeah,
and have them email you first?
yeah, because
Because
the phone number is going to come up on the website anyways.
right,
It really is.
that's
But
what I'm
I'd
thinking.
rather. It's best for them to see the website so they can get to know me, and then say, okay, I'll call this guy, instead of just calling the guy and I go, ah. But yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
what we'll do then is let's just put the website on. So that'll send everyone right to the website,
Good.
and that
Yeah,
way they see kind of your bio and a little bit there too to reinforce
yeah.
what they've heard on here, and then
Right,
they can get in touch with you that way.
right,
I mean, it
right.
was how I got in touch with you was through your website.
Okay,
So because I had
okay.
used the
Yeah,
form that's on your website.
got it. Yeah, and that's
So
the way it came through, was straight through that way. That's perfect,
yeah.
actually.
So well, because
And
I
I
don't
check that
want to.
stuff.
I don't
Go
want
ahead.
to advertise a personal contact for you that a spam robot might misuse. So if
Okay,
we send it to the website, then you're just getting the same traffic that you're getting
okay.
already with that.
Pardon my ignorance.
So
Thank you for that. Thank you. Did not know that. It's perfect. It's
it's
good to know. That
I
works
I
out.
can't control your website, but I can control mine a little bit. So by doing it
Good.
that way.
Right. Exactly. Um,
Well,
we,
I think we've
we
gotten
got,
through our main questions, haven't we? Are we into
you,
speed round now?
hold on. How do clients get in touch with you? How often do you meet with the client and how long are the sessions?
Yeah, do that part.
Yeah, basically, it's upon their needs. And the thing is that I can, there's three ways that I do this. You can text me for a little bit. You can contact me on the phone, or I go and I visit and or do a Zoom thing. And each one can be kind of done differently. But what I find is that it's upon when they want to do it. I try to maintain a schedule, maybe once or twice a month, sometimes more. It all depends on the client's needs and if they're in a rough spot or not. Sometimes the one that goes out and shoots the BB gun wants to go every week, but the one that wants to do this or do that just wants me to be there once or twice a month. So it varies on their needs and the ways of communication. I've had one client, the guy that lives further south from here, he calls me when he feels rattled. He texts me because he never really calls me when he feels rattled or anxious. I
Right.
text him back and I distract him, and things are better. So in some cases, that's all that's needed with me. Now, if we were to, I don't want to. That's all that's needed with me. So it can work out in different ways.
So we talked early on about that single mom who doesn't have the extra support and the importance of bringing in the
Hmm.
uncle or someone to help her support that child. This
Right.
is that next level of support as they're getting out on their own. Now you're able to be that mentor type support
Correct.
to them as well, which I
Correct.
think is great because this sounds like these are young adults now and even older adults who have transitioned into their own now, but they may
Right.
need some extra support with someone to help them, whether they're in the job or a social setting or something to
Right.
be more independent.
Right. Right. I was titled by somebody. I gave all those things titled life coach, mentor, blah blah. One client had referred to me as a facilitator. Okay, that especially if you're out of town or you need something done up here and you live down here, how do you get something done for your child that may live up here? And I've got a
Right.
client now that I'm mentoring, in which they're moving, and I've got to make his transition a smooth one.
Okay.
Okay, he will have a job coach, but I do, how I'm going to be the mentor guy. So in some cases, I can do that for someone. Someone says, "Listen, I'm just too busy to do this. Can you help me find, or can you speak with, or if I need someone that can stand up with me?" That's what I try to do. I could be a liaison. In Florida, what they want to do, I don't know if you know this law in Florida, it's either a law or it's going to become a law in which anyone on the spectrum, if they're pulled in by the police, have to have a liaison there
Oh,
before the police can question them. Because,
nice.
okay, remember, I'm a first responder advocate so I totally respect the police as well. All I want is for the smoothest movement between those on the
Right.
spectrum. So different titles, different things to do, different ways of doing it. But yes, I will. If someone comes to me and says, my 13-year-old this, or my 18-year-old that, or my 22-year-old this, what are your thoughts? I'll do whatever I can, you know.
So,
Um,
parents that are listening, if you have a child who's in the area of Illinois and you don't live there, this is a resource you could plug into as far as hiring him to come in and to step in to help where you can't be physically right now, to just check in
correct.
even on your child as they're becoming more independent.
Exactly.
I think it's great.
Exactly.
I love what you're doing too with the advocacy and trying to help with the first responders, helping to make sure that they're not being misunderstood when they're picked up. That
Correct.
they have a chance to be who they are, but yet to not be misunderstood in the process and
Well, and
judged
think about it
accordingly.
too. It could be an invisible disability, that like a deafness or blind in the one eye the cop can't see, or maybe it's dysgraphia of some sort, can't
Yep.
read, can't understand, right? So
Right.
there's right these invisible disabilities, and the other thing is I always said to first responders, I think, look at it this way, and this is getting real technical. Imagine a first responder who came about somebody who totally just flipped out because they're diabetic and they had a diabetic
Right.
seizure.
Right.
Diabetes is invisible
Yep.
disability, and if you have the wrong sugar levels, so even then, I mean, I can't stand up for everything invisible. I know only certain topics, but when you want to get down to the nitty gritty, there's a lot more invisible disabilities out there that, we can't see, that do limit some of us in doing
Yeah.
certain things. That's
We had
all.
touched on invisible disabilities in episode 5, I believe it was. And then even today's topic that we're talking about, this is an invisible disability. In your case,
Totally.
especially, no one's going to suspect meeting you that you have
Yeah.
autism. That's going to be the
No,
furthest thing from their mind.
no.
But it's there, and and then we have some others coming on in the next weeks who are going to come in that same category. And I really feel like we really need to be aware that these disabilities are out there and they're misunderstood. Yes, like in episode 5 when my son shared his story, he was misunderstood as a kid because no one recognized there was something going on, and he couldn't explain it, and so he's being judged and mistreated a little bit. But then we have others, like you're saying, the medical issues. The no one's wearing a sign all over them saying, hey, I have this.
Correct. Right. Right.
We
Right.
would all have
Exactly.
billboards on our heads. So,
Right. Well, I think about it. Think about, you had a kid on the spectrum that had diabetes as well, and that had a
yeah.
bad experience with diabetes. That kid's going to be pulled in and they're going to think he's on LSD or something. And
Right.
and and that's when I did some of my presentations in front of the first responders. I said, first of all, I go, look at our eyes. You're always, our eyes are supposed to give us evidence of whether or not we're on drugs or not. Ask us if we're on any medication, okay? And then if you can do that, you can eliminate a few things and say, okay, are you on the spectrum? Okay. Or do you have an invisible disability that you should be making me aware of?
Right.
Maybe that becomes, a better way of things being handled. But there's so many of them out there. We don't want to use it as a crutch.
Right.
Okay. I don't want my invisibility is not a crutch for me. My
No.
invisibility is something that it's given me the purpose to broaden the understanding.
I
Then that's
really
when.
like the teaching first responders to ask the question, do you have an invisible disability that I need
Right.
to know about? Just that
Right.
simple question triggers the
Correct.
person they're talking to. Oh yeah, wait, I was supposed to say this. And
Right.
I didn't
Right.
think about saying it,
Right.
you know.
Right. Yeah. The one thing. The funny thing is, and I can finish up with this, is that when I did the presentation with the first responders, I said, I want to show you the similarities between me being on the spectrum and you being a first responder. And I listed, and I wish I had the list right over here somewhere: the stress, the anxiety, the desire not to want to be there, the desire to want to be home doing whatever. And I listed off, and I'm sorry I can't remember the 5 or 6 of them. And I go, what's the difference between you, Mr. Officer, and me? I go, when we meet, we're feeling the same thing. We need to understand that. So, yeah, and I'm not there to try to tell them what to do. I'm just trying to tell them to give them a better idea of how to understand
Right.
why I might not look at them all the time when they're asking me to look at them, at the
Mm-hmm.
side window here, and I'm drifting off
Right.
this way, right? It's
Yeah.
not I'm on drugs, officer. It's just that I'm on the spectrum and I can't always make eye contact.
Right. Right. All right. Well, this has been really interesting. I'd love to continue talking more, maybe down the road, and regroup again and see if we've had some comments coming in from parents. Those that are listening and watching this on YouTube, even if you have specific questions, drop them in the comments so that we can start collecting those questions, or send them through Instagram or through email, and we'll put them all together and see if maybe we can come back again with Justin in the future and talk through some more of these questions. I think he's giving us a good perspective that I can't give you personally, but he's been very willing to come on and to open his life for us. And I really appreciate it, Justin, with you coming in to do this.
It's been my pleasure. I would love to do it again. I do hope that, my objective is that if I can just change a couple of people, enlighten them to, whether it's through this, what we're doing here, or further down the road, that's just what I want to do. I want people to understand us better, and it'll make you for a happier life. That I guarantee. Once you understand us better and we understand you, it's a much happier life. Yeah. I guarantee it.
All right, so we've gotten really serious here, and I'm going to change the mood completely because now it's time for the speed round.
Yes.
And have you seen any of the episodes with the speed round yet?
No, I'm ready to go. So hit me with your best shot, and I'll do the best I can.
All right. So for Justin and those who haven't watched any of the episodes yet, the speed round is a series of 10 questions. The first 3 questions are open-ended questions. That'll just be a prompt, and you just give the first thing that you think of. And the last 7 questions are either-or questions. I'll give you either 2 words or 2 phrases, and you choose which one. If you're stuck, you can always say pass or both, or make up a new answer that I didn't give you. But ideally, it'll be one of the 2 of them. But I don't know if anyone has gone through the entire list and followed all the directions yet. So, all right, so the first 3 questions, open-ended. What's your favorite color?
I'd say probably blue, boring blue.
Okay. Hey, it's not boring. It's not boring. It's mine as well. So, what's the last book that you read?
The last fiction book I read was the Da Vinci Code.
Okay, good.
But I don't read. I don't read. And I've always said if I read, I'd be wicked mentally if I read. I don't read. Ugh.
As smart as you are, you probably would be.
I was. Yes, I'd be wicked.
All right,
that's the last book I'd say I read.
Okay, what's your favorite holiday? These are supposed to be easy. Come on.
It should be easy, but here's the thing: it should be easy. But as I've gotten older, I don't have favorite anythings anymore. I just enjoy the grander things in life. What's my favorite holiday? Wow, I don't have one. March, April, May. Memorial Day.
All right. Thank you. You're the first one who has not said either Thanksgiving or Christmas. So,
you know why? Because fighting's always done on those holidays.
Oh, there you go. I figured we had to have someone come up with a different holiday soon. So thank you. I appreciate you adding something different. My chart's going to be really small so far on that one. So,
and that little dot over
exactly.
Here. You go, that's Justin.
You are an outlier right now, but we'll see if others start joining you over there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let's see.
Okay. So now the last 7 will be our either or. So the first one of those is cake or ice cream.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. All right. So Batman or Superman?
Batman.
Oh, you knew that one right off. So,
real fast.
Ocean or mountains?
Both, because I got both. Okay. Lake Tahoe is the place to be. There's water and mountains.
Right,
both.
there you go. Okay, we can count that. Winter or summer?
Summer.
Watch a movie or read a book?
Movie, I guess.
Okay. Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Oh, please, neither but Harry Potter.
Okay.
Neither but Harry Potter.
And Twitter or Instagram?
Actually, I don't have an Instagram account. I've only got a Twitter account I barely use, so Twitter.
So Twitter. So Justin, thank you for coming on today. We really appreciate what you've shared with us and just being so open about your life and just giving us such a nice perspective of what we might be able to understand with some of the kids that we meet. So I appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, you're welcome, Tonya. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I've had a great time. And if I can help anybody, it'd be awesome.
Thank you. And I want you to keep us posted on some of the advocacy work that you're doing, and we can try and give some updates along the way too.
Sure, most definitely.
All right, great. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed hearing about what Justin is doing with ASD With Me by advocating for individuals with invisible disabilities when he works with first responders, and how he's mentoring others who are on the spectrum. Next week, Tonya will speak with the executive director of the Arc of the Triangle. Be sure to tune in for episode 12 to learn about this valuable resource for individuals who have autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and other intellectual and developmental disabilities.
You've been listening to the Water Prairie Chronicles. Any resources mentioned during this episode will be posted in the description. If you're interested in joining us as a guest, contact us through the links in the description below. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your friends. We appreciate your support as we build this resource. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week for a new episode.